Okay. Okay. So, welcome, whether you're watching this on TikTok or whether you are watching this on YouTube. I'm going to be doing a month of July Lenormand Grand Tableau forecast. Hi, Cherry. How are you? So we're going to see what the month of July has in store for the collective, and we're going to do it in the Grand Tableau format. Let's see. Welcome in, welcome in. Six, seven, wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Hi, Dale. Finally, I just ordered some Lenormand decks for my birthday. Ooh, that's exciting. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. This is my second monthly Grand Tableau forecast. So I am really excited to do it. Oh my gosh, happy birthday. Um, yeah, so I'm really excited to do it. It ended up being very accurate last time, and I had never thought about doing a Grand Tableau for like a monthly forecast. But it seemed to go very well, and people really liked it. So I was like, let me do it again, and it'll make good YouTube content because this stream is probably going to be about an hour and a half, somewhere around there. What's up, Heber? And the longest part of a Grand Tableau, well, one of the longest parts, is just actually setting it up. Okay, so we got it. Hey Maria, how are you? Oh my gosh, I'm nervous for this grand tableau. Yeah, so we got all of our cards. Um, Pesky power cord. You know what I'm gonna. I can. I can just like put this right now. Okay. Well, we'll just work with it. So excited for this grand tableau. All right. So welcome in everybody. So how do you set up a grand tableau? So a grand tableau is 36 cards. So you're looking at 9 rows. So it's basically a 9x4 grid, right? And you set it up in the order of the cards. So the rider would be the first house because it's the first card in a grand tableau deck. The cross would be the 36th house because it is the 36th card in the Lenormand deck. And you just kind of read from upper left to bottom right. And you go from there. So it's basically 36 mini readings. So we're gonna be here for a little bit, but it's getting filtered already. Oh no. So we're gonna be here for a little bit, but it's gonna give us a really good idea of what the month of July is gonna look like. So I'm so excited. The last time we did this was, I think, March or May, and we had talked about some kind of major event, and then like all that stuff with the Pope happened. So, yeah, I'm super excited. So let's get into it. So our first card, potentially me, it was right after my comment of saying, "Oh no." Yeah. Well, hold on. I'm gonna post this on YouTube, so I can't say what I wanted to say, but that makes sense. So the first card we have here is the Rider, and in the house, or excuse me, the first card we have here is the Book, and the Book is in the house of the Rider, right? So the Book, we're talking about higher education. We're talking about learning. This could potentially um, relate to journaling, but I'm thinking this is more education based. Now the Rider is about communication. It's about how we sort of receive and send information. So some of us might be having some more academic conversations with people. Some of us might be connecting to people through academic institutions, or we might be connecting with people through coursework or studies, and that doesn't have to be like a formal or official study, like collegiate. It can be a special interest group or something like that. Like say you get into an astrology group, or say you get into a mediumship circle. You could consider those realms of the Book, right? In which we're connecting with people while we're learning skills. So we might potentially be seeing communication come about in that manner. What I love about this is it's next to the Stork, the Heart, and the Bouquet. Now, with those energies kind of being influencing towards it, anything that we go to learn in the month of July is going to be something that's going to be very fruitful, right? We're looking at a lot of really positive, abundant energy directed towards that rider, that idea of communication and messages. So we're going to be able to have a lot of clarity and understanding in our interactions this month. We're going to be able to retain and recall a lot of information this month. So this is the perfect month for learning, growing, communicating. It's really just the perfect month to expand your skill set and also show your skill set to others. Those of you that are in the business of, maybe a teaching, or you offer a service that's very heavy on instructing your client. In the second house of the Clover, we have the Heart. Now, the Clover is this idea of small victories, right? It's this idea of building manifestation, things that kind of snowball. It's not that idea of big abundance, but it's that idea of these little wins that really turn into something bigger. Now, when we look at that with the context of the Heart, that's something that we're very passionate about. So it's this idea that we're going to have not necessarily big wins on the things that we're passionate about this month, but we're going to have small victories victories, and those victories are going to build the manifestation. The abundance is going to be manifested little by little, and I think that's going to turn into a big chain reaction for a lot of us. And I think it's going to lead to something very positive during this month of July. I think we're going to be in a much better place at the end of the month in terms of our passions and pursuits of the heart than we were in the beginning of the month. A little caveat here is that, well, one, it's by the stork and the bouquet and the child, which is all, once again, very, very positive energy drawing into this house and into this card, paired with the book. So that idea that we have to do a little bit of work there. But it's this idea that there's a lot of positivity going into that. However, the second card and the one next to it is the mice. Now, the mice is our first negative polarity card of the spread. So with the mice, it's sort of this idea that it's sort of this idea and this warning that we don't want to let things go by the wayside, right? We want to stay on top of things. The mice is very much a card at its core of neglect. The mice speaks to infestation. It speaks to rot and decay. So things that we don't necessarily want, especially with all this positivity in the beginning corner here. But the mice can be very easily mitigated. It's one of the most, in my opinion, easily solved dilemmas of the Lenormand, because the answer is in the problem, right? If we have an infestation of mice, think of it very literally, like mice in your house, right? So if you see, mice in your house, what do? You lay traps, you call an exterminator. Might take a week or so, mice are gone, right? So this is something that can be solved nearly immediately by taking action. The problem is with this card is that it is in the house of the ship. It's in the third house. So the ship is all about taking action, which indicates to me that the problem here is that we're not taking action, right? So when we're looking at this is something that we really need to stay on top of. We may need to do some self-work and some self-discipline in terms of, how do I keep myself moving? How do I not get complacent in where I'm at? That way I can continue to move towards where I'm going. And that's really where the energy of the house of the ship is going to help you mitigate the energy that's affecting it, which is the mice, right? So we want to pay very close attention to this house through the month of July. Even though there's really good things coming, we have got to make sure that we don't get complacent and we don't let these things fall by the wayside, because that's what's really going to get us if we don't manage that really well. And that coming up so early in the spread indicates to me that that might be something that affects us earlier in the month rather than later, right? So when you look at the grand tableau, after you read a few, you kind of get an idea of, pattern recognition and where things are going. I find that towards the beginning of a grand tableau, these are things that are more recent or apparent, and things that may come up sooner. So with this being the third card in, we might see this within that first week, second week of the month, right? So we want to look out for that for sure. Good news is we have the key in the house of the house, right? So the house is a place of comfort. It's where we feel like we are most at home. It's where we're able to really have and build a solid and secure foundation. The key, it speaks to being very literal, right? It's about unlocking something. It's about taking our skill sets and using it to elevate ourselves. Now, the idea of a key actually unlocking a house is very literal in this sense. So we're at the point in the month of July where a lot of us already have the skill sets that we need to feel safe and secure and to build that really good foundation. And that is just an absolutely fantastic place to start. And that might be why we're seeing these messages of abundance so soon within the Grand Tableau, because we've already done a lot of work last month. I feel like last month was very last month might have been very heavy on work and development for a lot of us out in the collective. So this is an indication that work has paid off. We already have what we need to sort of advance this month. It's just a matter of advancing and what that looks like. So I think that might that mice card might actually relate to the first week of the month rather than the second, because it feels like this energy is really kind of settling in very nicely in the key in the house. So that those first 4 houses might actually be the first week of the month. Those might be themes that we're seeing this week in terms of, making sure we're not letting things go by the wayside and staying on top of things. So the next card is the birds, and that is in the house of the tree. Now, what I love about this is that birds tend to nest in trees, right, in real life. So there is a little bit of symbiosis with this placement. The birds are kind of about our immediate social circle. It's about networking. It's about how we communicate with people in our immediate social group, right? So with the tree is kind of like our legacy, right? It's sort of what we leave behind. Some people attribute it to genealogy, but it's also about health. It can be about wealth, legacy, roots, mental health. So I think with this one, we're going to be talking a lot more about roots and mental health. So I think that with it being influenced by the house card, with the birds being next to the key, I think remembering sort of where we came from as a guideline to where we're going is going to be very important this July. But I also think with the birds being there, focusing on our mental health and how we are reacting to the environment and the people around us is going to be very important. Welcome in, Rose. Is going to be very important. And I think the people within our life, particularly this July, are going to be very instrumental in forming how we feel about our interactions with the world. So ensuring that we have the proper people around us is going to be very important here in July, more so than, the previous month that I did the Grand Tableau forecast, and I think this month is going to be very focused on the people around us. And it's very interesting because we have the woman card next in the House of the Clouds. So with this, there is this idea of, this could be a real woman. This could be, a person that presents very feminine or has very divine feminine energy. This could also just be individuals who have very divine feminine traits, traditional divine feminine traits. In terms of their personality, but it all boils back to this idea of, the people around us. And in this case, it's talking about a feminine energy, but it's in the clouds, which is very interesting because it almost, it indicates a little bit of confusion or disorientation, maybe a little bit uncertainty about this people or about this person or this energy. So this idea that we may already be sort of sniffing out people that were like, I don't know how I feel. I don't know how I feel about the interactions I'm having with you. I don't know how I feel about your intent or your intentions. So we're already seeing these themes of sort of mistrust with some of our immediate social groupings, which is very significant when we're coming from a place of the birds and the tree, right? Because the tree is a very strong placement and the birds are our immediate social grouping. So to have immediately after that a querent card or a significator card, which is in a house that is not necessarily beneficial, the clouds are a negative polarity, it brings into question whether or not we're going to be doing a little bit of reevaluation of friend groups this July and really deciding, making some decisions on who we're going to keep in our life and who we're not. We do also have in the next house of the snake, the bear card. Now, the bear is sort of almost the antithesis of the snake, right? The bear is very much this idea of capability. It's entrepreneurship. It is, it's abundance building, and it's it's kind of like the self-starter. It's manifesting its own opportunities. And the snake is this idea of something very negative that we can see, right? So it's something that it's not something that's hidden to us. The snake is very apparent. We're able to easily identify it. So this could almost be like an imposter syndrome situation. Maybe some of us may not feel like we're capable enough or we're ready to take on the next phase or the next cycle. And with the bear card being such a strong indication, especially with the snake kind of being the lesser of the bear, um, I would say that the imposter syndrome is unwarranted, right? It's kind of this idea of, and again, with the tree, we had talked about how that kind of has that effect of the mental health there. So going back to that card and how it influences the bear in the house of the snake, I would say that that's a very strong indication that some people in the collective, many people, might be feeling that imposter syndrome. Um, but the good thing about that is we have the anchor right next to it, and that's in the house of the coffin, right? So this represents what I think is going to be our first challenge of July. And I think our first challenge is to get over that imposter syndrome, to tackle that imposter syndrome head on. The anchor is this idea of very definitive endings. It can also be an indication of grounding. It can also be an indication that we're going to stop and regroup. But being in the house of the coffin, it sort of doubles down on that message, right? Because even though the coffin is a negative polarity card, the negative polarity comes with the challenges of overcoming that definitive ending. It's not necessarily that it has to be painful. The coffin just represents the potential pain associated with endings, right? So the coffin doubles down on that message of, hey, this has got to stop. It's going to stop right now. And once it does stop, it's not going to start again. So I think a lot of us are going to be doing self-work in terms of really acknowledging what we're capable of and kind of managing those intrusive negative self-critical thoughts, right? And allowing ourselves to really believe that we can do something and then go out and do it. And then this energy tackling this challenge is going to bring us to a head with the house in the house of the bouquet. So after we manage that imposter syndrome, after we kind of get over that hump, we are greeted with the abundance that's present in the house of the bouquet, and the comfort and security of home. So what that basically indicates to us is that after we get over this hump, we're going to feel safe and secure in who we are, what our capabilities are. And it's going to bring us abundance, right? We're going to be able to leverage that. And we're going to be able to leverage that in a way that's not only financially helpful, but good for our mental health as well. Hi, Heather. But good for our mental health as well. So, yeah, so with the bear in the house of the coffin, I think that really, or excuse me, with the bear in the house of the snake and then the anchor in the house of the coffin, that really, and hi Mystic, that really indicates to me that we're going to be dealing with imposter syndrome. And once we get over that hump, we are going to be met with that safety and security that's required for building abundance. And I think that abundance is going to continue to build throughout the month of July. And I think it's important to remember that there are multiple kinds of abundance. There's financial abundance, physical abundance, and then there's the abundance within ourselves. You know, that idea of mental health, emotional well-being, spiritual connection. And I think the abundance that's really going to take root here is that emotional and spiritual health and well-being. I think that's what's really going to come from this. And I think maybe later down the line, you know, I haven't read the rest of the cards, but, you know, we might see some financial abundance down the line. But right now, it's important to take care of us. And I think that this first row of this July forecast is really saying that the collective is going to have to face that challenge of imposter syndrome, and going to have to face that challenge of deciding who we're going to keep in our life, who serves us and who doesn't, and who we can pour into and who can pour into us. And you know, we're going to take care of ourselves this month. This is the month of our expansion and our safety and our security. So very important and very transformative first row. But let's look into what might be happening as we get towards more of the beginning, middle of the month. So we have the stork in the house of the scythe, which I find to be very interesting because the stork is all about deliverance, right? It's about new opportunities. It's about things coming in. So I love that we're talking about that after we had talked about that solid foundation being built with the house and the bouquet. So now we're starting to see things come in after we tackle that. The scythe, however, is about, it can be about routine, but it's very much about culling, right? It's about taking what serves us, as we were talking with the birds, and leaving what doesn't, right? Getting rid of that, sort of rotten crops or rotten fruit, however you want to word it. But ultimately, I think this is going to boil down to what opportunities are we being presented with, because I think that we will be presented with a lot of opportunities in the month of July, both for personal expansion and maybe some financial opportunities. And it's really going to be which of these opportunities are going to best serve me. Which of these opportunities seem like they are going to put me in the direction and the path that I can see myself heading in, and which of these opportunities don't necessarily resonate. Because remember, even if it's a good opportunity, not every opportunity is for us, right? So choosing something that resonates with our path, with our being, is very important. Authenticity is going to be the word for July. Is Rose here? She's actually driving home, but she's in the chat listening. So yeah, authenticity is going to be the word for July. We want to be authentic both in how we present ourselves and in the choices we make. And the stork in the house of the scythe really doubles down on this. Now, what I love about this grand tableau is the bouquet, and the bouquet is in the house of the broom. Now, the broom is a house of routine, right? It's a house of maintenance. So, with the bouquet indicating that big amount of abundance, it kind of suggests that we're going to be getting hit with some big abundance opportunities throughout the month of July, and there might be some maintenance in terms of, oh, I'd like to take that, yes please, I'll take that, yeah I'll take that, yeah I'll take that win. So especially with the child being right next to it, the stork is right next to it, the heart is adjacent to it. There's a lot of good cards that are pouring positive energy into this. Again, it is adjacent to the mice. So even though this is a very good card, and even though it establishes a routine of abundance, which is very lovely, it does also warn us a little bit like, hey, don't get complacent with it. Like, yes, you're going to get good things. Yes, abundance is coming. But the second that we sort of let that fall by the wayside, or let our maintenance of the situation, our grip of the situation go, that's when things can start to lose their momentum. So July, beginning middle of the month is really where we're going to see a lot of the small wins from the heart and the clover house really start to snowball. There's going to be a lot of momentum, and we don't want to lose that, and that's why that mice card is really important. There may be some challenges because the mountain is below it, but it's also adjacent to the clouds and the sun. So again, the sun is sort of clearing out that disorientation when we look at that combined energy. So those two kind of cancel itself out, but we'll definitely be feeling a little bit of that disorientation. And the mountain is an indication like, okay, maybe we need to do, a few things, in order to get those big abundances, in order to continue to maintain that abundance. But it looks like we're going to be gaining a lot of momentum towards gearing up towards the middle part of the month. We do have the child in the house of the birds. I feel so seen right now. I'm glad. We do have the child in the house of the birds. So the child is definitely an indication of innocence. It can represent our inner child. So maybe a lot of us are working on fulfilling our inner child this July. It also represents beginning. It represents hope. it can indicate some playfulness. It can also indicate innocence, but I really don't think that's the context here. So I think we're looking at some playfulness. We're looking at maybe some inner child fulfillment. We might also be looking at some new beginnings and some hope towards the middle part of the month here. It is adjacent to the moon, it talks about our inner world. So really, I think what we're looking at here is really that inner child fulfillment. I think some of you might have dreams, goals, and aspirations that you might have been putting to the wayside. You might also come into some realization of some inner dreams, because we do have those themes of beginnings with the child. So I think that we might be seeing that, and I think that with it being next to the bouquet, it's this idea that we're going to be able to fulfill those, right? We're going to be able to take those dreams, aspirations, take those wants and desires of the inner child and do something really, truly tangible with that. It does have the sun next or below it as well, so an indication that there is some prosperity there. Again, the mice is touching it, so we really want to make sure that we don't get complacent, that we stay on top of things. It is adjacent to the key and the heart. Not me literally making comfort soup for my child as you're saying that. Yeah, I mean, it manifests in very physical ways. So if that's something that makes you feel more connected to your inner child, that might be some confirmation for you that this is going to be an especially important theme for you this month. But we have the key and the heart adjacent to it, which is very indicative of that passion and being able to unlock that side of ourselves. So those of us that may have even repressed our inner child may be seeing some unlocking of the inner child and the wants and desires of that inner child. We do have the mountain adjacent to it, and the mountain and the mice are really the only negative polarity cards that are affecting the child right now. So the mountain is this very just temporary obstacle. So this is something that might be able to be solved with meditation, something that might be able to solve by just paying attention, because we have that mice, which is very easily remedied by taking action. So the mountain card could indicate that we need to take some action on that mice card. But ultimately, this is going to be a very positive placement. The child is in the house of the birds as well. And to me, what this indicates is our communication with others, and our connection with others is very much going to be based on our passions. It's very much going to be this idea of... It's very much going to be this idea of, hey, I really connect with your authenticity. I really connect with the way that you do things. I really connect with the way that you emotionally process situations, right? So we're looking at people that are like-minded in the sense that they want progress, they want goals, they share similar aspirations to us. We're going to find that in our interactions with others, we're going to be finding and interacting a lot more with people who believe in reciprocity, which is very positive for our interpersonal relations and our social life. So I think it's going to be very important to keep a lookout for that as well. In our next house, we have the rider in the house of the child. So the rider, again, is that idea of communication, how we communicate, the forms of communication that we take, just the general idea of messages spreading, right? With that being in the house of the child, and we talked about the child being in the house of the birds just now with how we're communicating with others and how our energy is dynamically playing out in social interactions and within our interactions with ourselves. This is just kind of a affirmation here, right? Because we have the key, which is right above it, and the key is sort of this idea that childlike innocence, that the passions that we have and the goals that we have are kind of going to be the key to moving forward. We have the dog, the moon, and the sun that are all adjacent to this card. The dog meaning loyalty, the moon being our internal climate, the sun kind of being this idea of joy. We have this all pouring positive energy in. We do still have the mice that is bringing a little bit of negative polarity into this house and this card. And then we have the cross right next to it, which is also bringing a little bit of a bigger negative polarity into the card. So we might be seeing some struggles with this, but I think ultimately it's going to be struggles that are consistent but not overwhelming, if that makes sense, right? I think with our communication and our friends groups, and sort of honoring ourselves and honoring our inner child and unlocking our inner child, I think what we're going to see there is some consistent struggle, but not struggle that feels damning or struggle that feels like we're not going to overcome it, right? This is going to be something that we're going to have to take in chunks and take in stride, but ultimately, we can overcome this. Our next card is the cross, and the cross is in the house of the fox. So this is where we really get into the people around us, especially with this being right next to the rider and right below the birds. The cross is sort of this idea of a consistent struggle, right? This is something that we're going to have to deal with for a little bit. Hi, Julia. This is something that we're going to have to deal with for a little bit. We're not really going to be able to solve in the month of July. This is going to be a consistent, repetitive cycle for us. With it being in the house of the fox, I think our big struggle is going to be people that, especially with it being below the birds card, I think our big struggle is going to be people that we believe have our best interest in mind and people that we believe are in our corner. And then we find out they're not, right? Because the fox is sort of that card of cunning. It's that card of hidden things. So with that, we're just going to have to take that as it comes, unfortunately, because people aren't predictable. Well, people are predictable, but people can be unpredictable, I should say. So if it's not an element within ourself, it's not something that we can control completely, right? The only things that we can control completely are those emotional elements within ourselves. So when it comes to other people, we're just going to have to kind of take that as it comes, unfortunately. Something, however, that we can control that is directly linked to this cross in the house of the fox is the snake, which is right next to it. And the snake's in the house of the bear. So, and the bear is actually in the house of the snake as well in the first row. So we're seeing that imposter syndrome come back. So what we might see, and this is very interesting because it's by the cross. Okay, so in the beginning of the month, we're going to be dealing with this imposter syndrome, right? And I think that we're going to get over it, and we think we're going to get over it, and then it's something that resurfaces, right? So we're going to have to deal with that again. And it looks like it's actually playing out in the same pattern as it does in the sort of very beginning of the month, because we have the ring and the crossroads after that. So we're going to see that imposter syndrome pattern come back where we get over it, good things happen, it hits us again, then we're going to get over it, and then we're going to have to, kind of do the same thing, the same pattern, I suppose. So I think that's going to be something that we're going to be consistently dealing with during the month of July, because we have the cross and we have the cross next to the snake in the house of the bear. But as we deal with that, I feel like we're going to get more capable every time. So there is purpose to this. It just sucks. Give me 1 second. Got my water delivery, y'all. But where are we? Yeah, I ran out of water earlier, so. That's crispy. So in that we have I know you need it. Yeah, I did. Fresh. That's water from an Alaskan Eskimo medicine man. Oh gosh, I love that movie. But next we have the yes, the snake in the house of the bear. So this is really doubling down on the previous message. In that first row, we had the bear in the house of the snake. So really, that's sort of saying that we're repeating that cycle, and it's very interesting because they're also adjacent to each other. So this cycle is going to be something that's connected, at least for the first part of the month, and we're going to be seeing that kind of recurring. We have the fox in the house of the stars after that. So again, this goes back to that imposter syndrome, and it is very much connected to the bear in the house of the snake and the snake in the house of the bear. It's directly adjacent and next to it. So with that fox, the stars is very much how we're perceived by the public, and sort of our public image, what we are putting out to other people, right? What we are deeming worthy of public consumption, right? So it can bring out that imposter syndrome, especially if we feel like we are putting out a vibe that we can't actually match, or we feel like those feelings of being fraudulent, or whatever thoughts of self-doubt come up for you. This is kind of what we're going to see with that stars card, and it's very tied in with that bear and snake sort of energy that seems to be affecting really this whole corner of the grand tableau. This energy is very deep seated in, so we're really going to see this towards the beginning, right before the middle of the month. We're really going to be dealing with these themes very heavy, and I think it's really going to be something that is affecting our mental health. I really think that birds in the house of the tree is going to be very relevant, and I think that tree is just doubling down on that message of mental health there. So we're really seeing this whole corner of the tableau affected. We're looking at like 1, 2, 3, 4. We're looking at about 12 cards out of a 36 card spread affected by this. And I don't want to sound like a meteorologist, but that is an energetic storm rolling in, right? So we want to go back to that ship card with the mice, and we want to make sure that we are managing things very well, and we're not getting complacent and letting things go by. We do have some good news, however. In the storm, we have the ring, and I'm really viewing this ring as kind of the eye of the storm, right? It's actually right in the middle of this 12 card effect, if you will. And the ring is in the house of the stork. Now, the stork is about deliverance. It's a very overtly positive card. It's about good things coming. It's about manifestations coming to light, right? And the ring is about commitment. So it's this idea that even though these things are happening, even though we might be feeling this imposter syndrome, even though we might have feelings of unworthiness, or we might have these potential setbacks, staying committed is going to be key. Getting through this is going to be key, because that energy of manifestation and that energy of abundance, even through all this BS, is still there, and the momentum is still building, right? So long as we're not getting complacent, that energy is still building. We still have this bouquet in the house of the broom that is working for us throughout the entire month. So even though personally we might be going through the works, energetically we're still in a very positive disposition. So really a lot of the challenge is going to come in how we're personally affected by these things and how we're personally handling them, but the energy is still on our side. So I don't want anybody in the collective to get discouraged hearing about this sort of energetic storm that we have in this corner of the chart. We also have Crossroads in the house of the dog right next to that, and the dog is all about loyalty. The dog is my favorite card in the whole damn deck. And the dog it's very much about that loyalty. It's very much about staying true to what is and what's been established. It's that idea of companionship, with the crossroads being in the house of the dog, and that being right next to the ring and the stork, which is this idea of being committed. It's this idea that what comes to you will stay if you continue that maintenance work that we have with the bouquet and the broom, and we manage that really well, and we don't let that go by the wayside like the mice in the house of the ship. It's this idea that the decisions we make are going to lead us towards abundance. We're going to be consistently moving towards abundance, even if we feel like we're taking even if we feel like the BS has taken us, right? We're still heading towards a place of abundance because we're committed to getting through it, because we're wading through all that BS, because we're getting to the end, and that's our intention. Intention setting is going to be very, very important. I would highly recommend that if you haven't already, you set your intention for the month of July before we get into that sort of BS phase. We're definitely not there yet. We're still in sort of the Rider Clovership house phase of the month. So definitely make sure you're setting intentions, definitely making sure that you start your manifestations. That way, when you hit this bouquet in the broom, you've already capitalized on your manifestations. And by the time you hit that sort of energetic storm that we're going to see in the middle part of July, we're at a place where we just have to do maintenance work rather than kind of try to manifest through all that crap and gunk, right? What's interesting here is next in the house of the tower, we have the clouds. So the tower is all about reputation. It's about organization. It's kind of about the people that sign our checks, right? So this can be in relation to our jobs. If you're self-employed, if you are, you do a spiritual business, it could also be in relation to your business. But the clouds in the house of the tower, it's very much this idea of, if you have a day job, it's like, I'm really not sure. It's almost like this BS is going to translate into the day job, right? We might be seeing more problems in the day job that we might not normally see. We might be having feelings like, is this job or career for me? We might be having, lack of respect for our superiors at our day jobs. We might just be dealing with a lot of job BS, and I know a lot of us that have jobs in the day-to-day usually do, but it's definitely something worth mentioning. The important thing here is that we want to acknowledge, what about looking for a day job? So if you're looking for a day job, I would think that when you do a job interview, the interview is going to leave you unsure of whether or not you want the job. I think that's how that would really translate. Just because I think with the clouds in the tower, if you're looking for a day job, you're going to see the cracks in the foundation, so to speak. And I think if you're already in the job, you've already seen the cracks in the foundation because you know the job like the back of your hand, but you're really going to be like, I don't know if this is for me. But so we want to really keep an eye on that. Now, what's important about this, especially because we're coming from that energetic storm, the most important thing about this is to be proactive and not reactive. So if you feel like your job is going downhill, if you feel like your job is in jeopardy, we're going to want to look at the patterns. We're going to want to recognize the patterns. We're going to want to plan accordingly, but we don't want to make rash decisions, right? We want to maintain, and we want to have the upper hand. Emotional acting never gives us the upper hand. It makes it very hard for us to make very informed decisions. And as somebody that very much likes to play chess, I feel like acting out of emotion puts you in a place where you're playing checkers. No, we're going to make power plays. We are going to be in a better, more advantageous position. And that's what this is kind of talking about. For those of us that own our own business or are entrepreneurs, strategy is best. Absolutely. Especially and honestly with the clouds, when you can't really see what's happening around you energetically, strategy is really going to be the only way to go, right? We want to be guided by intuition and backed by fact. I'm going to trademark that. But we want to be guided by intuition and backed by fact in this situation. Now, for those of us that own our own businesses or are maybe entrepreneurs, this can speak to that imposter syndrome we were talking about. So just ensuring that we position ourselves in a place where we are pushing forward and we're making the best. This is take me to church. That we position ourselves where we're consistently going forward, but we're doing so in a way that does not feel rash and does not feel inauthentic to our journey. Right. And what's interesting is this is by the mountain card. So the mountain is this idea of a temporary obstacle, and clouds are a temporary weather system. So this is something that's going to clear. I think this is something that you're going to be dealing with more smack dab in the middle of the month. And I have a feeling that by the end of the month it'll dissipate, but we'll check in on that as we read further into the card spread. But I do have a feeling that'll dissipate. The mountains are in the house of the garden, and the garden is about our larger collective. So I'm speaking to people that are specifically building a platform now, right? We're either building a platform or we're at a job where networking is key. Working with a large audience or a large customer base is key. It's this idea that we might be having some trials and tribulations in terms of building or expanding and growing that community, because the garden is this idea of the larger collective, right? So we might be having some trouble connecting to the larger collective, but again, the mountain card is something that's temporary. So when we're looking at this, we're looking at something that can be overcome, right? So I don't think there's a whole lot to say about the mountain and the garden, to be honest, just that that's a hiccup to expect, and that is a hiccup that we can move through with relative ease. And I've been networking and doing coffee chats. Yeah, I think that it's going to be difficult at first, but I think that we're going to move through that with relative ease, especially since we have the sun right next to it, which is in the house of the mountain, right? So with us having the sun, there's this idea of clarity. So with the sun connected to the mountain, which is connected to the clouds, right? That's illumination. It's things being revealed, it's clarity, it's light, it's knowledge. So when we're looking at that, it's an indication that this may be the end of the clouds there, right? We may, through this networking, find people that are able to assist us in, dealing with the themes of the clouds being in the tower. We're also looking at happiness. We're looking at the illumination of the qualities of others. So this might help us with managing our immediate social circle, which was a challenge that we had in that we might see in the first month of July. And it also may bring a lot of illumination and self-truths about, who we are and how we handle things. So I think that there's going to be a lot of learning that comes from this card, and it's a very clear indication that this mountain will be easily overcome, and the temporary setback will be very easily dealt with. So I think as far as the mountain cards, the two places that the mountain is prevalent, it's very good because there's indications that it'll pass very quickly. So good stuff there. We have the moon right next to it, and that's in the house of the crossroads. Now, when we're looking at the crossroads, we're looking at decisions. So what's very interesting is we have the crossroads in the house of the dog. And the dog is about loyalty. It's about, sticking with it, companionship. And here we have the moon influencing the crossroads. So the moon is our internal climate. It functions very much like the moon does in astrology, right? It's our internal climate. It's how we view ourselves. It's our most authentic self. It's where we're at emotionally. With that being in the house of the crossroads, it's this idea that these decisions that we may be making are going to be decisions within ourselves, right? It's going to be like, is this what I stand for? Is this what I want? Is this the direction that I want to go in? Is this something that's going to satisfy me? Things of that nature, things that are very close and personal. So with the moon being there and then the dog being in the house of the crossroads, even though they're at separate parts of the deck, they're still very connected. And this is the tricky thing about grand tableaus that I tell my students, right? Even though we're reading around a card, that doesn't mean that this energy is not present all the way across the spread. We still have to consider that, right? So looking at this and tying all that energy together, it's a very good indication that the decisions that we make are going to be the decisions that best serve us, right? So those of us who are dealing with that imposter syndrome, because again, I think that's something that's going to be coming up very often. It's this idea that, hey, towards the end of the month, we're getting to the point that we're very confident in our decisions, and it's like, hey, I'm going to stick with these decisions. I think that this is a solid baseline. This is what I want, and this is what I'm going to go for. So we're seeing a lot of confidence build towards the end of the month. And oh my gosh, we have the dog right next to it. So, that just doubles down on that. So again, that's crazy, and I just gave that spiel. But so we still even have that energy directly next to it. So these are going to be things that are very closely linked. So we're going to really want to watch out. We're going to really want to watch out for that. And what's funny is the dog is in the house of the mice. So making sure that we're staying on top of managing that imposter syndrome, making sure that we're staying on top of managing the direction that we're going, not letting things fall by the wayside, not getting complacent. Hold on, I got to puzzle you guys. Okay, there we go. Not getting complacent in what we're doing and the decisions that we're making, but ultimately, this is an indication that towards the end of the month of July, we're really finding strong direction and we're really finding a strong sense of empowerment. So very, very good in that aspect. After the dog in the house of the mice, we have the coffin in the house of the heart, which is very interesting. The coffin usually speaks to things ending and ending very definitively, right? So with that being in the house of the heart, I think that a lot of us towards the end of July, more towards the middle, but leaning towards the end, we are going to be starting to chase those passions. We're going to be starting to chase those dreams. We're going to be starting to really manifest what we truly desire, right? But in doing so, we have to make room for these things. Right? We have to make a house for this abundance of energy. We have to ensure that we have the capacity and the space to accept the good things as they come. And that may mean letting go of some things. Now, even if we're letting go of things that no longer serve us, like people, situations, if we're comfortable with those people and comfortable with those situations, even though they're not serving us, that can still be painful. That can still be a hard pill to swallow. It can still be difficult. And that's really what that coffin is speaking to. The coffin is a negative polarity, not because it's an ending, but because the coffin in the Lenormand speaks to the emotional difficulty of situations ending. So the situation ending, the idea of cycles, these are positive things that come from the coffin card, but the emotional weight of these situations coming to an end, the emotional burden of giving up some things that we had thought that we wanted that we realized we no longer do, that is where the challenge and the negative polarity of the coffin come out. So definitely very important to keep a strong watch on your emotions and how you're feeling as you go through the process of potentially doing those things. The next card we have is the broom in the House of the Ring. So that really doubles down on the message of the ring. Honestly, the ring is all about commitment and the broom is about routine. So in having commitment, we have to have a routine in keeping that commitment. So I don't really think there's a whole lot to be said for that specific placement in that house. At least in the context of this grand tableau for July, other than the fact that we have to be committed to taking an active role in keeping our commitments. I think that's what that really just boils down to. We do have the Tower in the House of the Book as our next card. Now the Tower, we had talked about that idea of, governing institutions, organizations, bodies, If we're in our own business, it can speak to ourselves. But being as it's in the house of the book is all about studying. It's all about learning and expanding skill sets. So if you have a day job, I would say learning new skills to put you in a more advantageous role in that job, or give you a new opportunity to take an advantageous role in another job, would be kind of what that message boils down to. If you own your own business, you're trying to build your own business, you're an entrepreneur, what I would say is to look at other businesses that are within your same niche, look at what they're doing, see what's working for them, and trying to learn from that. Right? Studying your competitors is one of the best ways to make business decisions. You can't make a well-informed decision if you're not well-informed. So it's kind of that idea of putting that business edge on your business. And I think that a lot of people, specifically who do spiritual businesses, don't necessarily like to do that because they feel like it's copying. But methods of doing business aren't copyrighted. Unless it's a product or some kind of system or something like that. There's nothing wrong with looking at a business and being like, I really like what they're doing. How can I implement that and make it my own? So I think that is really what that speaks to there as well, in terms of if we're doing that for ourselves. What I find interesting is that we have the clover right next to that, and the clover is in the house of the letter, right? So it's this idea of small victories. It's this idea of building abundance. We have the heart in the house of the clover in the beginning of our spread. So I think we're going to start getting communications. I think we're going to start getting direct opportunities. We may, have collaborations with other people. We may, hear that we booked a venue or something like that, or that we got a promotion, something like that, through some type of direct communication. And in that way, I think that we're going to come to a much better place of abundance, and we're going to really start to see that build. And I think I think with it being right next to the tower, and the tower being in the house of the book, it's going to be this idea of really really finding our voice and finding our place within our respective practices and businesses. But before I move on to the end of the month, real quick, I'm gonna pause real fast because I gotta grab something real quick. But I'll be right back. Okay, welcome back, and thank you guys so much for sticking around. So, we are moving on to the last row of the Grand Tableau. Now, the last row is usually what I see towards the very end of the month. So, we have the stars in the house of the man. Now, the stars in the house of the man is very interesting because we originally had the Fox in the House of the Stars. So we've kind of transitioned from this energy of imposter syndrome to this energy of self-empowerment. So I think towards the end of the month is really where we're going to start seeing this imposter syndrome kind of die down and hit the last of its life expectancy, I guess. This is really where that imposter syndrome and that difficulty with self-belief starts to wind down and die out, right? With it's very interesting because it's next to the man card as well, so it really reinforces that idea like, hey, we're done with this imposter syndrome. So I think that with the lessons learned towards the really in the middle of the month, we're going to be in a much more advantageous place, and we're going to be in a place of capability, right? We do have the man next to it in the house of the woman. Now, what this really is striking a balance, right? The man is representative of those divine masculine traits, the woman representative of those divine feminine traits. It's this idea that to be our most potent self, we have to accept the full aspect of who we are, right? And in accepting the full aspect of who we are, we accept the full potential of what we can achieve. And that's, I think, where this abundance is really going to come to a head, and we're really going to see a lot of good things coming and a lot of the culmination of these building energies. Makes complete sense. Good, 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 good. Next to this is the tree in the house of the lily. Now, I love this because the tree is the sort of the idea of it's sort of the idea of roots. It is that legacy, and we were talking about how in this reading, the most likely utility of the tree is mental health, right? Now, what I love about this is the lily can mean purity, it can mean innocence, it can mean, parents, but the lily can also mean maturity, right? So when we're looking at the lily in the house of the tree, and if the tree is in, if we're looking at the tree as the aspect of mental health within this month of July, we're really seeing an improvement, a drastic improvement in mental health. We're seeing ourselves with a more mature outlook. We're seeing ourselves as more capable. We are making very well-informed decisions. So this kind of row is really showing the lessons that we've learned from the trials that we've had during the month of July. And it seems like we're going to be in a place where we're a lot more capable. We're very multifaceted, more so than we were at the beginning of the month. And we're at a place where we can really take on what comes to us, what hits us. We have the fish next to that in the house of the sun, and the sun is about illumination. The fish is about abundance, but it's a different type of abundance from, say, the bouquet. Where the bouquet speaks to that kind of financial, physical abundance, the fish is sort of our needs being met. Whether that's emotional, spiritual, physical, food, water, shelter, that kind of idea. We're going to see our needs met, and I think for a lot of us, looking at how this month began, the primary need that I feel a lot of us needed met within the collective is emotional and spiritual. And I think towards the end of the month, we're going to find that those needs have been met. And I think it's going to put us at a very solid foundation to start whatever the next month has in store for us. But ultimately, and the sun, ultimately with it being in the house of the sun, it indicates that that's going to be highlighted. So other people may notice that you're more capable. Other people may notice that you're more emotionally stable. You may get complimented on how you've handled certain situations towards the end of the month, because the sun is all about that illumination, and it's about revealing things and highlighting things. So, I'm I'm very interested to see how that specific card and house placement manifests for people in the collective this month. So if you remember at the end of the month, you'll have to come back and let me know. But I'd be very interested in seeing how that energy manifests. We have it next to the moon, or excuse me, we have it next to the lily, which is in the house of the moon. Now, the lily talks about that maturity, and I think for the purposes of this grand tableau, we're gonna use the lily exclusively as maturity, since the tree really we're using exclusively as mental health. Um, I think with the moon, we talked about how that represents our internal climate. We talked about how that represents, who we are on a deeper level. We talked about how the moon can represent how we feel about ourselves, where our authenticity comes from. With the lily being there, it indicates that we may have matured as people. We may have learned some personal lessons. We may have done some personal development and growth. But ultimately, it indicates that we're at a much better place. Um, Not only in the physical world, but within our own internal emotional climate. So I think we're really just going off of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards. We're going to see a lot of the growth and the good things from this month having affected our more personal side, our more internal climate. The next card we have is the ship, and the ship is in the house of the key. So with this, it's that idea of maintaining momentum, how we were talking about the mice in the ship card, not getting complacent and not letting things go by the wayside. I think that this is really indicating that we can take this energy very strongly into the next cycle and take this energy very strongly into the next month. So this is really encouraging us, hey, don't let this go. Keep this energy and this momentum moving, and it's going to take us places. So I think that we're going to have a lot of residual energy from the end of July kind of leak into August. So I think some of us might have a really good start to August, just going off of what I'm seeing here. Even though this grand tableau is a forecast for July, there's just a lot of abundance that's still building even towards the end of the month. We do have the fish in the house of the scythe. So in maintaining that momentum, we want to, continue to maintain our abundance, right? Taking out what no longer serves us, what's not serving us, and really just doing maintenance. Because in the beginning of the reading, that scythe is very heavy on getting a lot of the energetic debris out of our immediate vicinity. The scythe here is more representative of maintenance work. So we just want to maintain what we've built throughout the month of July and maintain the status of the energy and the cleanliness of the energy that we've created during the month of July. Our next card is the garden. And the garden is in the house of the anchor. So with this, the anchor does speak to stability, and I think that that's really what we're seeing here, kind of that energy stabilizing towards the end of the month. And I think that we're going to see not necessarily a large, how do I want to word this? We're not necessarily going to see a large jump in our communities, those of us that are building communities, but we're going to see a consistent and stable rate of growth within the communities that we've built. Now, that's not to say we're and it could mean we're getting stable followers, but that's not even to say we're increasing our follower count for those of us that are building a platform. What that is to say is that within our communities will grow, they will evolve, and they will kind of move towards maybe the vision that we have for them. Now, for those of you that are not building a community, for those of you that are maybe networking for a job, we may see some of the people that we connect with recur. So we may not have to do so much networking. We may be able to maintain the network that we built and not necessarily have to worry about so much on the back end. Now, our last card of the Grand Tableau forecast for July is the letter in the house of the cross. So, the letter is very much that direct communication. It's how people talk to us, it's how we talk to people. It's also the contents of that communication. So, we were talking about how the cross was. Let me see what house the cross was in. The cross was in the house of the fox. So it really touches back to that cross in the house of the fox, where we might have to, we may consistently be dealing with those people that are not necessarily that don't necessarily have our best interests in mind, and that doesn't detract from who we are. It doesn't detract from what we're achieving. At this point in the July spread, we're towards the end of July. We've got a lot of capabilities and utility under our belt. It's just a nuisance at this point, right? So with this, it's a very good indication that the way you're going to find these people out is by the way they communicate. So a lot of us are very good at picking up some shady-ish, right? A lot of us are very good at looking at the way somebody talks to us and saying, did they mean to come across that way? Or are they actually, is it me or is it them, right? And with a lot of these situations, it's going to be them, right? A lot of us are very adept at understanding that communication is a very valuable tool, not only to exchange ideas, but to exchange intention. And those of us that are very, very big and focused on intention understand that words have power. And we understand how to pick the intention out of the words of others. And in doing that, those that do not have our best interest in mind, as we pick the intention out of their words, we also take the power from them, right? So I think that even though we're still going to have to deal with this and we're still going to have to maintain this, I think a lot of us are going to be very good at picking up when someone is shady or slighting us. And I think we're going to be very good at managing that situation in a way that doesn't bring us out of character, isn't reactive. It's just, this is my expectations. We're not meeting them. If you want to give them a chance, you can say, this is what I need from you to continue this relationship or dynamic. If maybe they're going through a phase or something. And if you're not giving them if you don't want to give them that second win, so to speak, you can be like, hey, I don't like how this has been going. I don't like the way you're speaking to me. I think that it's time that we just leave amicably. So I think that that's something that we might see towards the end of the month, when some of those people that may not have gotten filtered out in the beginning, start to get your undivided attention. Because the more we work through this month of July, the less is going to be on our plate to deal with energetically, because we're getting these good things coming through for the collective, and we're building some capabilities through these challenges. You're going to be in a place where you're very capable at the end of July, and I think that's going to lead to a level of elevated respect in the interactions that people have with you. But that level of respect is going to be acquired because there's going to be an elevated level of respect for yourself. I think at the beginning of this July, a lot of people in the collective are dealing with this imposter syndrome, and that in itself undermines some of our self-respect when we feel like, we aren't who we portray ourselves to be, or we don't feel we're as capable as we are. It not only undermines us, but it undercuts our value. So I think that in dealing with those, our respect for ourselves will grow, our feeling of capability and utility will grow, and that's going to make tackling this cross house at the end of this Grand Tableau a non-issue, which is very potent, because usually when you see the cross in the Lenormand, it's something that's very consistent and something that's very difficult, something that's very hard to get over. But I really feel like the month of July is going to be very transformative for the collective. I think a lot of people are waking up, so to speak, and I think it's really going to mitigate a lot of the negativity that cross brings. but it's looking like July is going to be a much better month for the collective than May or March, whatever the last collective Grand Tableau I did was. But yeah, looks to be very solid. So I'm very excited for those of you in the collective. If anybody has any questions or anything like that, feel free to pop them in the chat. I'm going to stick around for a couple more minutes. And then I'll probably end the live. But let me know if you guys have any questions or any thoughts on the month of July. Absolutely, absolutely. Oh my gosh. I feel like I could drink a gallon of water right now. Felt like a lot was already happening. Yeah, so the great thing about doing the Grand Tableaus 5 months into the month of July is that usually I would say the rider through the house of the tree are things that are usually already happening by now. So we can see some of those themes already playing out. What's the most important thing to remember when learning to read the Grand Tableau? I would say the most important thing to remember when doing a Grand Tableau is that you're not just doing one reading. And that is where a lot of people get tripped up because they're like, there's just like this one reading is massive and I can't do it. There's too much information. There's too much to filter through. But in reality, what you're doing with a Grand Tableau and why it's called a Grand Tableau is you're doing 36 mini readings effectively. So if you're able to compartmentalize, do those 36 readings, but at the end of every mini reading, connect it to the rest of the Grand Tableau. Not only is your reading going to be a lot more potent, but it's going to feel a lot more manageable because doing a 36 card reading sounds absolutely like nightmare fuel, right? But doing a mini reading doesn't sound that bad. So if we look at this as 36 mini readings, it's a lot easier to take in and to manage. So that would be my recommendation for somebody learning to read a Grand Tableau. Feels like a lot of shadow work is being resolved, clearing us out and making room for the new. Absolutely. That is a key part of this July reading, specifically with the clouds. The House of the Cloud, Snake, Coffin, Bouquet, Bear, Stars, Stork, Dog, Heart, Ring, Book, and Letter. So 12 cards out of the 36 card reading is entirely about shadow work and doing that clearing work. So, I'll be honest. I have not seen an entire corner of a Grand Tableau be impacted so deeply before. So I think the month of July is going to be very potent for the collective. I feel like a lot of stuff I worked through last month is clearing now. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we're having some lag from last month in terms of where the energy is. And I think that we're getting these big pops of abundance this month because the energy is still building momentum towards the end of July, looking at the Grand Tableau. So I think that we're going to have kind of like that residual momentum push us into the month of August. So really, really solid there. Amazing reading. Thank you. I feel better. I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad I could pop on and do this. I'll likely post this to my YouTube as well. For those of you that would like to look back on it, maybe at the end of the month, you want to see what held up, what didn't, I'd be curious to hear thoughts, but I'm definitely going to be posting this to my YouTube. Also, for those of you that do not know or didn't see, I just got a new storefront website up that has all my readings and all of North Node Astro's readings on it, including the new mediumship stuff. And my coaching is now on there as well. So I am just super excited about that. I have I have 2 coaching slots open right now. So I'm super excited. But yes, very very good stuff. So hopefully those themes of abundance that we're seeing in July hit me too. Um, but yes, I hope that everybody has a great happy July. I'm gonna pop off of here and get some dinner, hang out for a little bit. Um, but thank you all so much for coming out to my second monthly Grand to Blow forecast. I hope that you found the information valuable, and I will catch you guys next time I go live. All right. Oh, also, free Lenormand workshop. I literally almost forgot about that. I cannot believe. I'm doing a free Lenormand workshop for those that are interested in Lenormand, but can't get the coaching, or just aren't ready to learn yet, don't have a deck yet, feel free to come out. And I have it linked in my bio. It's on July 18th, and I'll be doing Lenormand demonstrations. I'll be talking about the cards, how to read them, some caveats to them. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be tailored to people that know Lenormand already, and it's also going to be tailored to people that know nothing about Lenormand. So I'm really excited. Come on out, get an opportunity to be a sitter, get a free Lenormand reading, and learn a little bit about the Lenormand. But with that being said, do you know what time PST? Let me look up a time converter because I'm going to be so real. I'm so bad with time zones. Let me see here. Time zones are my Achilles heel. You said it's 6:30. He's 9:37 p. 6:37 right now. So it's gonna be 8:30 to 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. So 6, 7, 8, 9. So 8, 7. So that would be like 5:30 to 6:30 your time, I think. 5:30. Okay, yeah. I'm so bad with that. But that's gonna be a Friday. Um, Let me see. Yeah, that's gonna be a Friday. So Friday, July 18th, 8:30 to 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, 5:30 to 6:30 PST. On the 18th, yeah. I have if you want to put it in your calendar or anything like that, on the link in my bio, I actually have a Zoom link. I don't know if when you click the Zoom links, if they still put it on your calendar or not. But it's on the link in my bio, so everybody's welcome to come. But yeah, all right. So with that, I will actually sign off and go get dinner. Yeah, no problem. I hope to see you guys there. But I hope everybody has a good night, and thank you so much for joining me for this Lenormand forecast.